July 2019, I of course fought for my main girl Pearl during the Final Fest Splatocalypse, the final Splatoon 2 Splatfest. In the battle of chaos versus order, Pearl's chaotic charm won out, defeating Marina's orderly nature. It wasn't until 2022, over 3 years later, did I jump back into the series. Around the release of the third title, I finally went back to the Splatoon 2 single-player campaigns. The core game was alright, but I was blown away by Octo Expansion. The levels fantastic, the music jamming, and the interactions between Agent 8, Captain Cuttlefish, and my beloved Off the Hook were the icing on top. In 2023, I wrote about how I found Splatoon 3's combination of Octo-style levels and wider open hubs to be almost perfect, link in the description, but I couldn't help but long for the one thing it lacked: Pearl and Marina. But I didn't lose hope. The campaign included a single photo of Pearl and Marina on tour. And with that and that alone, I knew Splatoon would be returning to my favorite idols eventually. I needn't wait long for my first breadcrumb with the announcement of the Splatoon 3 Expansion Pass, DLC that with the forthcoming wave would allow players to visit Inkopolis Plaza from the original Splatoon, and the promise of a single-player Wave 2 at some point later. A single-player campaign that teased a return to a bleached Inkopolis Square and an Octoling who could only be Agent 8. Of course, we had to wait a full year, but Splatoon 3 Expansion Pass Wave 2 Side Order released February 28th, 2024. Side Order begins with a train ride. Neo Agent 3 is off on another adventure to who knows where, but begins to drift off, nodding to sleep as the Matrix-type symbols slowly take over. The strange symbols recede to reveal Agent 8. 8 blinks open their eyes to find a strange landscape. It's Inkopolis Square, but wrong. Everything has been bleached white, and there's an ominous tower erected where the battle arena should be. But their attention is quickly turned to an adorable drone. This little guy introduces herself as Pearl, but she's a robot now for some reason. And believe it or not, she's heard Marina's voice at the top of that strange tower. The two head inside to find the musician Deadfish, spelled with a 1, Marina's old friend, who introduces themselves as Oct. Oct tells the duo that they also feel Marina is at the apex, but is unable to proceed any higher. They explain how the elevator can only go up one level at a time, in which a challenge needs to be completed before it'll rise to the next. A gelatin, the enemies within the tower, broke their hand and they are no longer fit for battle, but 8 and Pearl are more than up to the challenge. And some light spoilers for the first few hours of the game. The trio fight their way up to the top of the floor to find an order-corrupted Marina. After a tense battle and a pretty sick solo track, 8 is able to defeat the singer, freeing her from Order's clutches, but the presence vows revenge. It blasts 8 and Marina out of the tower, who were only just saved by Pearlbot. But now the tower is taller, harder, with a dark, glitchy substance coating the peak. 8 is once again woken up in this off-white plaza, but this time is greeted by a squidified Pearl and lead developer Marina. The immensely talented Octoling briefs 8 on the situation. During the course of the Off the Hook World Tour, Marina and a group of hired Octoling programmers were building a virtual reality space called the Memverse. This project was designed to help those who were abducted by Commander Tartar, the AI intelligence who attempted to destroy the world during Agent 8's previous outing. The captured Octolings lost all of their memories, and Marina designed the tower to help them reclaim their pasts. Only somehow Order took control of the Memverse. It began forcefully pulling in mines all over Inkopolis and Splatsville, sanitizing them, wiping away anything it deemed chaotic. wiping away all personality whatsoever. And now it toiled away atop the tower, ceaselessly working to sanitize the whole world, to bring everything and everyone into perfect and meticulous order. But with Marina now freed, she pledges to help too. Thus 8, Pearlbot, Marina, and Oct must traverse to the top of the tower to toss some chaos into Order's plans. Splatoon 3 Side Order is still Splatoon 3, it's still Splatoon. The core gameplay is the same as in any other game modes across any of the games. 8 utilizes a series of main and side weapons to cover surfaces and blast enemies. They can hop around, swim through the ink, and attack baddies. But where the other single-player campaigns were comprised of mostly linear, level-based challenges, Side Order is a run-based game, or a roguelite. The tower-climbing edifice is the narrative explanation for putting 8 through a series of interchangeable micro-levels where they must defeat or navigate around horrifying fish-like enemies called gelatins while solving a specific challenge. But with Pearlbot in tow, 8 has a couple new options. When jumping from a high ledge, Pearl lets 8 glide down slowly, or what I like to call the Breath of the Wild effect. And as the duo traverse more floors, Pearl can be upgraded to have attacks of her own. Most require charging up. For Pearl to shoot off things like her big laser beam, 8 will need to ink enough ground or splat enough enemies, but if they manage to collect 3 disc pieces, Pearl will be able to let out a sonic blast that knocks away any nearby enemies and will block any more from spawning in for a short time. Each floor will, usually, have a selection of options for 8 to pick from, with each having a randomized challenge and a randomized floor plan associated with it. The challenges are: defeat all the portals that are spawning gelatins, navigate a turbine tower through a path, maintain the splat field or fields, destroy the fleeing enemies, and sink all the 8 balls into the required holes. And each of the different floor plans have their own implementations of the aforementioned challenges, with the exception of a couple floors which were more uniquely designed. Deciding which option to pick often depends on the listed difficulty, or by which palette would work best. Each level has a difficulty from easy to rigorous. The more difficult the challenge, the more membucks are rewarded upon completion. These bucks can be spent on the occasional vending machine to restock lives, buy new color chips, or swap out sub-weapons. But the more important reward is the color chip. Each chip upgrades one of 8's or Pearl's abilities, from making their weapons stronger, which was my personal go-to, or letting Pearl do her cool moves like shooting lasers or slinging bombs, to making said moves occur more frequently. And hopefully 8 will be strong enough by the time they reach every 10th floor. These are the boss floors. After ending a run, win or lose, the amount of membucks and color chips collected are tabulated to reward Pearls. That's spelled P-R-L-Z, all caps. Pearls can then be spent outside the tower on a couple different things. Marina is able to use them to hack into the tower itself, making things easier on 8. Some of the more useful hacks include weakening enemies on lower floors, increasing 8's damage output, or letting Pearlbot unlock new abilities. There's also a vendor that'll sell 8 things that can then be brought out of the Memverse into main Splatoon 3, like locker items or this Pearl and Marina banner that I will be using forever. Lastly, by defeating boss floors for the first time with each of the different weapons, or palettes as they're referred to in the game, keys are rewarded. These keys unlock lockers that are out in the hub, and can reward 8 with new palettes, extra pearls, or entries in Marina's devlog diary. The last being some of the most exciting since they explain how Marina and Co. built the Memverse during her and Pearl's tour. Once again, minor spoiler alert, Side Order is a run-based roguelite game. As is oft the case with the genre, Side Order is designed to be beaten numerous times, and depending on expectations, I can see how having to beat the same structure multiple times could chafe against others. That being said, beating the true final boss once is rewarded with a satisfying conclusion to the narrative. Reaching the apex once will be enough for most. but to get the full experience and the full backstory, it'll need to be beaten quite a few more times, significantly more for 100% completion. I, however, do love a good run-based game. My two most favorite touchstones are The Binding of Isaac and Hades. Side Order is definitely a solid entry in the genre. It doesn't quite hit the highs of either one I mentioned, but it is still a good one of those. I already enjoy playing Splatoon, especially so in a single-player context, and what Side Order did was take the core mechanics and tuned them in a way that made them feel fresh again. The most obvious tuning was to the enemies. In the other campaigns, enemies are micro-puzzles. They must be planned for and maneuvered around before being taken out. In Side Order, they're programmed to swarm 8, an inordinate amount of guys ceaselessly rushing towards them, and this changes how the levels can be completed. In so many cases, running from the enemies is preferable to sitting there and attempting to splat them. No matter how high I raised my attack or buffed up Pearl, enough enemies can and will overpower 8. So instead of taking out every enemy before reaching the goal, it's often advantageous to get those last few hits in on the spawning portal, or to push the turbine just a little bit further, and I found this twist in the gameplay to be invigorating. Speaking of levels, they were very well designed. Every floor was clear in its geometry. I always knew where to ink and swim, and every challenge was immediately understandable, even amidst the heat of battle. The easy-to-understand layouts and the clearly defined goals made it so the actual challenge of the levels was completing them while being attacked by hordes of guys. But this is a run-based game, and after a while I started playing through the same levels over and over, and it began wearing down on me, despite that the levels can be completed very quickly. Few took longer than 2 minutes, and the early ones I was completing sub 20 seconds. There was some enjoyment in seeing the game tell me when I got a new speed record, but overall it didn't have the staying power that other run-based games have. The bosses are yet another point of contention. There are only 3 regular bosses in addition to the top floor final boss, and only 2 of them are new to Side Order, the ball and the discs. The third is yet another remix of fighting bipedal octolings. All of the bosses were fun to learn and defeat, but with the amount of runs I completed, always having to beat 2 of the same 3, they grew stale very quickly. Which again is a bummer, because those first few times beating them were a blast. Oddly enough though, I don't have the same complaint for the floor 30 boss. I won't be describing it in detail, but I always enjoyed reaching it, in part because the battle is fun and the accompanying song is fantastic, but mainly because reaching these came with more story. I enjoyed Side Order's story, although this is largely due to my love and adoration for Pearl and Marina, and tossing Oct into the mix was a good plus. The bulk of their interactions take place in between floors, and each and every new line was a delectable treat, especially with how infrequently the conversations occur. But despite being rare, these lines still manage to endear these characters so much. One of my favorite moments was when Oct complimented 8, only for Marina to pipe in saying Pearl was even better, and for Oct to respond with, "Yeah, sure." In fact, the entire reoccurring dynamic of Oct being puzzled by Marina's utter devotion to Pearl was incredibly fun. I just wish there was more of it. Splatoon 3 single players have always thrived on their interpersonal conversations, but with the switch to small challenges over checkpoint-based levels, almost all of the dialogue has been stripped out. Maybe they'll pipe up in between boss phases, but there's almost no fun conversation. The only time these characters are characterized is during the brief floor interstitials, during main cutscenes, or right before the final boss. But the pool for interstitials is quite small. I started receiving duplicate conversations before I beat the final boss the requisite number of times, which meant for the entire roughly 40-minute duration of each run, the only new dialogue would be right before floor 30. And doing all of that for a single short scene was a bit much. Which is not to take away from the quality, because when they do speak, these characters are so fun to be around. Pearl and Marina continue to be the best there ever were, and I couldn't help but love Oct almost as much. Not only because I like their personality and find them cool and that they're a good addition to the existing dynamic, but also because they're non-binary. To have one of Nintendo's first non-binary characters be in a game that I love and a single-player campaign that I had a lot of fun with, I guess that means a lot to me. And they seem cool outside of that, too. As for the overarching story, it's fine. It's a different take at saving the world, and bringing it into a Matrix-style virtual reality space was good enough. There's also a character who speaks in Uwu, which was cute, but overall the draw is the 4 protagonists. Also, Marina's devlog was really fun to read through, and it's accompanied by some incredible new art. Speaking of art, the art direction in Side Order was off the hook, pun intended. Especially the character designs. Everybody looks stunning. The dev team gave us a taste with the one off-the-hook photo from the main campaign, but their fully rendered outfits were simply divine. I adore Pearl's big and poofy jacket, and Marina's open jacket look is simply too powerful. Plus, Pearl in her bot form is adorable in an entirely different way. The character designers did a great job taking Pearl's defining traits and making them round and robotic. Oct's outfit is also great. Their skin is hued green from their time being trapped by Tartar, and that combined with their black dress, boots, sunglasses, and baseball cap, it's a great look, they're pulling it off great, and dare I say gender. But what bums me out is 8's outfit. I did not like it. I never liked it. From the first glimpses we got during the teaser trailer, to the dozens or so hours I spent playing the actual game, I truly do not like it. Something about the white, puffy jumpsuit looking thing could never appeal to me. It wasn't entirely bad. I did like how 8's hair would adjust to the color of their ink, and luckily the rest of the art direction more than made up for 8's design. Every floor plan has a white, almost office building aesthetic to it. In my mind, I kept comparing it to what if the oldest house from Control was designed by GLaDOS from Portal 2. This is exemplified in the vending machine floors, which could be right out of either of those games. Also, 8's ink is fantastic. I love the possible color range. It changes depending on the color of the chips that they pick during each run, and the textures look so cool. All the ink is very glittery, and they have fantastic geometric patterns within, like concentric circles or rectangular lines. One of my biggest complaints with Splatoon's multiplayer is their refusal to play with textures in the ink, so seeing it utilized so well here made inking each of these stages so enticing. Given the game features 2 musical groups as the primary protagonists, Off the Hook and Deadfish, it's only appropriate that they've scored the bigger moments. Marina has a solo track early on, and Off the Hook collaborated with Deadfish for some of the later tracks too. One moment I really appreciated was in the final boss theme. The game's main melody, the jingle that plays after beating every level, is now the main hook. And at the very end of the song, Pearl sings it, then Marina sings it, then Oct plays it on the keys. Not only do I love that, like an Octo expansion, the level ending theme is reused during the climax, but right at the end of the song, each of the 3 collaborators getting to share in performing it, it felt really special to me. But where Oct composed the bulk of the Octo expansion soundtrack, the majority of Side Order's songs were done by the group Free Association, and I found myself really enjoying their style. Every song comes in triads. The first version of the song plays during the first 10 floors, the second version during the second 10, and the third during the final. Each version is progressively more intense, where they all use similar melodies and instrumentation, but the emotional tone of the piece mirrors the tougher levels. All the songs were incredibly enjoyable, and I never got tired of listening to them during my numerous playthroughs. So special thanks to the 4 real-life human composers who did a wonderful job scoring this game. After re-listening to both, I think I prefer the side order level themes over those from Octo Expansion. I'm sorry, Oct. Aside from a couple bangers, Octo Expansion went for a much more straightforward approach to songs. The tracks usually had a hook and a synthy loop, but were really more there to set the mood. Whereas in side order, each piece has a strong melody, one that's oftentimes cut and remixed beyond recognition, in addition to it being much more hectic. Every piece is bouncy and eclectic and utilizes harsher noises with a wide array of synths. I just prefer the side order OST more. But one thing that Octo comes out on top is with the off-the-hook songs. Side order just doesn't have enough of Pearl rapping or Marina singing. The first Octo song, Nasty Majesty, is enough to rival almost all of the side order tracks. Comparing side order to other run-based games, the process of slowly building a palette and racing to the top was a good loop. But it's no Isaac or Hades. Side order doesn't allow for too much variability in the runs. Yeah, the ink might be stronger, Pearl might be attacking more, little bombs might drop out of fallen guys to destroy even more guys, but it always felt the same. No matter the weapon being used, no matter the upgrade path, I never got so powerful that nothing could ever touch me. I never received so many upgrades that my playstyle would change. When I'm playing Isaac, and I get Brimstone with high tiers and max damage, I'm unstoppable, whereas if I'm in a run with low hearts but incredibly high damage, I've got to play much more carefully. In Hades, when I've got Poseidon's waves knocking back every foe and every other hit is a crit thanks to Artemis, I know Zagreus is getting out of hell. But if instead Dionysus will take care of the enemies as long as I tag them once, dodging becomes much more important. Playing each run and collecting a wonderfully unique build is one of the best parts of a run-based game, and side order cannot get to that point. None of the chips ever alter 8's playstyle in too substantial a way. And then there's completion. As is the case with most run-based games, completing side order is quite the hassle, and because I've got that bad brain bug that requires me to do so, of course I fully completed it. Again, light spoilers. Finishing the story requires beating the tower X number of times. That in and of itself is already fairly laborious, especially since the only rewards are keys and a couple lines of dialogue at the apex. But that isn't even the tip of the iceberg. Initially, I knew I'd need to get enough pearls to unlock all the upgrades and to buy out the shop. Easy enough. And my presumption was that I'd also need to collect every type of color chip at least once. Again, nothing major. But then I noticed how every color chip can have up to 3 little lines above it. That is because every single color chip in the game can be upgraded twice. For most to be fully upgraded, 8 needs to have added 5 of them to their palette during a single run. Mind you, there's only 30 floors, and the boss floors do not reward chips. And since the chips are handed out randomly, and a couple are exclusive to particular weapons, that meant I had to run through the tower even more, doing the same challenges dozens of times, hoping and praying that this would be the run the game finally lets me collect that 5th chip, and then I'd try to get the next. Needless to say, I did not need to grind for pearls. I had plenty once I fully upgraded that last chip. But here's the kicker. While I invariably and compulsively complete every game I play, and while this one was more laborious than others, I still largely enjoyed my time doing run after run, because the core loop, while not perfect, is still really fun. And the actual mechanics are still Splatoon, and I love playing Splatoon. I still love seeing these characters interact. The music was always great to listen to. The game was aesthetically wonderful, I enjoyed the chip customization, and the levels and bosses were still fun even at the end. Overall, I give Splatoon 3 Side Order a Marina's desktop background photo of Pearl smiling at the camera holding both of their necklaces because they are so incredibly into one another. I love them so much. Out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Side Order in the comments. Overall, I think I'd have to rate this package third, below both the main Splatoon 3 campaign and Octo expansion, but I still loved my time with it, and of course it had Pearl and Marina. Don't worry, you know who I backed during the Splatoon 3 final Splatfest. And hey, while you're here, maybe leave a rating on the video, or subscribe to be notified of everything else that I put out, or if you'd like to read my thoughts elsewhere, you can follow me on my social medias where I'm at Mario8th everywhere. Links in the description. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.